Hi guys, I'm Michelle.
I'm Phoebe.
And for our project, we decided to investigate more on personality disorders.
Yeah, so how do you guys feel when you're in like a negative environment? Like how does it make you feel?
Bad.
Other than that.
Other than that, like more specifically.
Negative.
Okay.
Anybody?
Stress. Yeah.
Stress.
Angry. Anxious. Yeah.
Okay, so among those answers, I heard anxious, which is part of a cluster. So personality disorders are categorized into 3 clusters: cluster A, B, and C. So cluster A is just for your odd behavior, like you're acting differently from what you normally act like. Cluster B is where you're very dramatic. So like, if I just like tap Phoebe like that, and she'll be like, oh my god, ow, like that hurts so much. Like that would be cluster B. And then cluster C would just be like your anxiety. And with those 3 clusters, those can be impacted by your culture, like we talked about, with like a negative culture surrounding you, or it can also be by your genes. So if like personality disorders or depression runs in your family, then you could have a higher chance of getting personality disorders. And with those clusters, there's also the effects that you can have. So you can become more hostile, isolated, antisocial, and just the normal behaviors you would get when you feel very negative about your own self.
Okay. So basically a study of what Michelle just summarized is like there's this 22-year-old girl who struggled with like self-harm and like, aggressive behavior and feelings of emptiness, and this occurred after she took like a really hard exam. It was like this higher education exam, and in her, so you know how Michelle was talking about like how you're brought up and the environment that surrounds you can influence these feelings of like emptiness or aggressive behavior. So she grew up in a family that pressured her a lot with like academics, and they were really hostile. So this kind of influenced her to have lower self-esteem, and then hence the personality disorder. And yeah, she was diagnosed with like depression as well. So she received pharmacological treatment and psychological treatment. But this is just an example of how like when we study psychology, we look at 3 lenses: like biological, sociocultural, and cognitive. So biological, it runs in your genes, and then also sociocultural, just the environment that you're in can have a big influence on how you feel. So, and then so this is just, we kind of addressed this in class before, but so the light is like the glucose levels. So when there's more light, there's like higher glucose concentration, which means there's more activity. So in the normal brain, the amygdala, where it controls your emotions, there's more concentration than in a psychopath's brain.
Yeah, and then in the medial prefrontal cortex, it would just be, because this part controls higher order functions, with less activity in a psychopath or like the personality disorder brain, then it's likely that you would act, like you would have less control over what your actions and your behaviors you're exerting onto your fellow peers in your community.
Yeah, and you'd be like more impulsive rather than thinking through your decisions. So
Yeah, that was
Just get over it.